Hello everyone and welcome to Quality Old Games. Today we are making another tier list, this time from tier 5 units in Rome Total War. And the perspective is the campaign setting, so it's not only about unit fighting capabilities, also the requirements, price, and something like that. Movement speed, for example, in campaign map are taken into account. So without further ado, let's begin with Cavalry. First we have armored elephants for Seleucid Empire and Carthage, and well, the downsides first. These guys take 3 turns to train and they are the most expensive unit in the game. At the same time, they really pack a punch for their price, so basically you can beat the campaign on very hard difficulty with these units without losing any one unit in the entire game. Well, it's a bit grindy, but you can do it. At the same time, they have archers on top of them, so they act kind of a missile cavalry, and most often you don't want to engage them with infantry, and especially if you are controlling them, you can kind of push through almost any formation. So yeah, really solid unit. Of course they are vulnerable to missiles, especially flaming ones, that can cause them to panic, but yeah, overall, really solid unit. However, because of those drawbacks, I think they are not quite on the Spartan tier, but really high on the wannabe Spartan tier. Then we have Parthia's Camel Cataphracts, which is kind of an interesting or niche unit. They can beat any horse cavalry in one-on-one, even cataphracts, so that's rather nice. At the same time, they are slower than any horse cavalry. They don't have shield, so even though they have high armor, they tend to be a bit vulnerable to missiles. And of course, that slow speed hampers them versus other units. And especially other cavalry units can outrun them. So, yeah. Based on the fighting capabilities, I would say they are decent, but since Parthia has cataphracts, normal cataphracts, which is a really strong unit, I think these guys just are kind of obsolete. So bad, and they need to be happy that they are not in the don't make tier. Then we have companion cavalry for Macedon and Seleucid Empire. I think for Seleucids they would be in the don't make tier, because Seleucid Empire has access to cataphracts, and cataphracts just are superior to these guys. Yep, there are some situations where companion cavalry can act as shock cavalry in a role that cataphracts are not quite able to fulfill. But still, for Seleucids they are don't make. But since Macedon has quite a bit worse cavalry roster than Seleucids, I think these guys are decent. I mean, Macedon needs them in the late game, but they are not quite on par with other elite cavalry units, in my opinion, so that's why they only get a decent rank. Then we have another elite cavalry unit, Praetorian Cavalry. For Roman factions, they clearly are in top 3 of cavalry units based on their fighting capabilities. Of course, taking 2 turns to train is a bit long, and tier 5 stables or circus maximums is kind of salty as well, but when you get these guys, they are a really solid addition to your army, so I think on the lower end of wannabe Spartans, because, well, the elephants are quite a bit better still. Then we have Sacred Band Cavalry. I think they suffer pretty much from the same issues as Companion Cavalry. They are not that good. And Carthage has elephants available, so that makes them kind of obsolete-ish. Well, then again, Carthage doesn't have any good heavy cavalry besides these guys. Long shield cavalry quite don't make it that far. But compared to other elite cavalries, these guys are kind of lacking. I can see myself taking perhaps 1 or 2 of these units in my armies if I want to chase down the enemies and don't rely on the general to be able to do that. So, I mean, yeah, perhaps decent on the weaker side. Then we have special units. First cohorts, first early legionary cohort. And, well, you can only train them in Rome. So that's a diamond side. They take 2 turns to train. Of course, if you have full army of first cohorts, well, you are in rather strong position. But when you take Rome, Rome most likely has high enough tier barracks to get those legionary first cohorts. So, I mean, these guys could be a bit obsolete as well. But in battle they are decent. Then again, you will run into troubles of retraining these guys. You need to run all the way back to Rome for retraining these. So that's clearly a major downside for these guys. So, of course, that's morale buffing around them is nice, but Roman units don't actually need that unless you are relying on auxilia units only. Legionaries can hold their own quite well, be they early or the late legionaries. So, I would say that early legionary first cohort is actually bad choice. Mostly because it's so hard to retrain and the Roman units don't actually need its benefits too much. The same downsides go for legionary first cohort. It's a bit better in the battle, I guess. That deserves its place in the lower end of decent tier. Then we have another rather interesting unit, this time Arcani. You can get them from Pantheon, at least the Julii. I guess Brutii can get them as well. And I think they are absolutely trash. So don't make them. The nice thing about them is that they can hide anywhere. But that's about it. And most likely you cannot even utilize that to make some ambushes in bigger battles because, well, the enemy front line is just too large. Then you need to skulk around it and then try to hit the rear, but then you will be visible as you are moving. So, yeah, I don't see practically any use for these guys. So, if you want to have more troops, make a legionary cohort instead. Then we have Praetorian cohort. Well, the really nice thing about these guys is that they take only Governor's Palace, or rather Imperial Palace, as requirements. So no barracks needed. That's really nice. A benefit for them. At the same time, they don't have good stamina, so in longer battles they tire more quickly than, for instance, legionary cohorts. They take 2 turns to train, but they are elite infantry. They really pack a punch. So I think at least wannabe Spartans. Well, wannabe Spartans. Yeah, let's put them there. But I think I would take Praetorian Cavalry in battle over these guys. Of course, I wouldn't most likely have those Circus Maximuses available, so kind of I don't know. Then again, Rome has better infantry units. Legionary cohorts take 1 turn to train, and this is clearly the best cavalry unit Rome has. So, yeah, I guess it will be this order. Then we have Seleucid Empire's elite infantry Silver Shield legionaries, which are actually pretty much like normal legionary cohorts for Romans. So, yeah, they take 2 turns to train. So that's a downside, and they are 1 tier higher than legionary cohorts. So they are a really solid unit, but the requirements are rather on the higher side. And because of that, I think they only get a place in decent tier. I mean, in some instances, the Seleucid Empire most certainly can use them. For example, defending walls, scaling walls, so on, where they cannot use those Silver Shield pikemen. But yeah, building a barracks costing about 10,000 for these guys alone is quite salty, so yeah, decent only. They are not bad, but compared to other tier 5 infantries, elite infantries, they are not quite so elite. And then we have the final elite infantry, that's really elite infantry, namely urban cohort. And based on the fighting capabilities alone, most definitely Spartan tier, 2 turns to train, tier 5 barracks, that's a bit salty. I have to also admit that I'm a fanboy of these units, so I might be a bit biased, but I will give them weak Spartan tier, though of course they most likely are the only unit in Spartan tier, but I would put them somewhere around here if this was the scale for the Spartan tier units over here. But yeah, one of the best units in the game in battle. They can take down almost anything. Those armor-piercing pillars are just wonderful. They have really high morale. I mean, yeah, they are the elite Roman unit. Of course, interestingly, in the historical setting, they are rather comparable to Townwats, rather the worst unit in Roman roster, but in the game, they are perhaps the real Spartans, as Spartan hoplites are not quite as good as them, in my opinion. Okay, let's move to missile units. We have artillery. I think I have said this many times before, I don't like artillery. First, we have heavy onagers for any other faction than Romans. They tend to slow you down. There might be some niche uses, for example, taking down walls. And, well, perhaps against some phalanxes or in bridge battles, those flaming ammo can be rather good. But 2 turns to train. I don't even remember the building names. It's something engineering range or something like that, even perhaps upgraded one. So the requirements are really high. Then again, I think of all of the siege weapons, heavy onagers are clearly the best in the battle, but the requirements are just too much. Don't make these guys. Then we have Roman version of heavy onagers. The crew of these guys is usually better than the crew of other factions, heavy onagers. So because of that, they get a bit higher place in the don't make tier, but still, I don't see that much use in them. Of course, if you have a plan of besieging a city and you can train these next to it, then perhaps, but as these slow down the campaign map movement speed of the whole army, I don't just see it's worth it. You can, most of them manage well enough with siege towers and so on. So yeah, don't make. And the same goes for repeating ballistas. You can try to snipe elite units and so on, but in most of the cases I would still take one additional elite unit of my own instead of these guys. So yeah, don't make repeating ballistas either. So this is my view of the tier 5 units in the Rome Total War in campaign setting. What do you think? Did I miss something? Did I add something too much here? Feel free to share your thoughts. Do you agree or disagree in the comments below? And overall, if you like the video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Have a great rest of the day. Quality Old Games out.